Dad, I'm the one approving your entire future. And you never even knew my name at work. Wind howls through the towering pines that border the narrow highway. The sky over Ashford. Oregon streaked in the bruised purples of an impending dusk. Madison Parker grips the steering wheel until her knuckles burn white. Every curve of the road tightening the invisible cord coiled in her chest. 5 years gone, and she's coming home. Her breath clouds the windshield, tension fogging her mind as much as the glass. The neon glow of a rustic diner sign blurs in her peripheral vision, casting flickering red letters that spell out, "Welcome to Ashford." It all feels smaller somehow, as if the town has shrunk in her absence. Or maybe she's just grown beyond it. Under the hum of her tires, Madison's phone buzzes in the cup holder, vibrating with a text from her older brother. "Ethan, big dinner tonight? Don't be late. Dad wants to talk about the Vanguard project." Vanguard. The word lands in her stomach like a stone. She glances at the black garment bag lying across the passenger seat. Inside, hidden beneath layers of polished brass and ribbons earned through years of sacrifice, rests the midnight blue uniform of a United States Army colonel, her uniform. The weight of that Silver Eagle insignia sometimes feels lighter than the secrets it's forced her to carry. The old highway sign rolls by Parker Road. Madison turns off without thinking. Tires crunching gravel, memories pressing in like ghosts. The last time she drove this path, she'd been 24, wearing a college hoodie, tears drying on her cheeks after telling her parents she'd accepted an ROTC commission. The military is for people without options. Madison, you're smarter than that. Her father's voice from that day slices through her mind, as sharp as ever. As she pulls into the driveway, she kills the engine and sits there, watching her reflection in the windshield, eyes shadowed, jaw set like she's bracing for impact. The house looks exactly the same. Pale blue siding, the white trim fading in patches, wind chimes tinkling beside the porch. A perfect slice of suburban Americana and a prison of silent judgments. She can almost hear her mother, Joanne, inside, fussing about table settings, complaining about the roast. She can practically see her father, Henry Parker, poring over emails from Vanguard Defense Systems. Brow furrowed in corporate battle, Madison finally exhales. She knows exactly how tonight will go. Ethan will brag about his latest promotion. Joanne will glow with pride. Henry will drop Vanguard's name every other sentence. And when they inevitably turn to Madison, someone will ask with a polite smile, "So, still in the Army, huh?" Madison reaches for the garment bag, fingers tracing the outline of the Silver Eagle pinned inside. Tomorrow, everything will change. Tonight, she has to survive one more dinner pretending to be less than who she is. But under it all, beneath the fear, the frustration, the pain, a single thought burns bright in Madison's chest. They think they know me, but they have no idea who I've become, or the power I hold in my hands. Madison swings open the creaking front door, the scent of rosemary and garlic wafting from the kitchen, carrying 1,000 memories that tighten her throat. Inside, the house feels frozen in time. Every photo along the hallway walls is a snapshot from before she left her high school graduation, prom night, the Parker family at Yellowstone. Madison's teenage grin beams from every frame, hair in ponytails, wearing a cheerleading uniform or a National Honor Society sash, yet nowhere, not a single picture, shows her standing in uniform. A half-finished jigsaw puzzle lies on the console table, just where it sat 5 years ago. Madison runs her fingertips across the cardboard edges, the dust, a thin layer of neglect. From the kitchen, her mother's voice floats out, tinged with impatience. "Madison, we're running behind schedule. Ethan and Rachel will be here any minute." Joanne Parker bustles into view, apron dusted with flour, auburn hair pinned into a perfect twist. smile tight as piano wire. "You took long enough? Traffic?" "Yeah, traffic." Madison's eyes flit to the family living room. The same floral couch, the same coffee table, the same impression in the carpet where her father's chair has always sat. Joanne wipes her hands on a towel and narrows her eyes. "You look tired. Are you sleeping enough? Army life must be exhausting. You know, Ethan never looks this worn out, even with all the stress of leading teams at Vanguard." Madison forces a thin smile. "I'm fine, Mom." "Well, I hope you're not planning on running off again after dinner. Your brother's been working so hard. He wants everyone here to hear about his new role. Big things are happening at Vanguard." Madison hears the click of a car door outside, then voices. "That'll be Ethan and Rachel." Joanne flits away, leaving Madison standing alone in the foyer. The door swings open, and Ethan Parker strides in like a conquering hero. Tailored blazer, hugging broad shoulders, hair perfectly styled. Beside him, Rachel glows in a sleek navy dress, phone already in hand, documenting life for social media. "Mads," Ethan says, spreading his arms wide. "Look at you, still rocking that minimalist look. You hiding medals under there." Madison stiffens as he hugs her, his cologne a mix of expensive spice and arrogance. "Hey, Ethan." Rachel leans in, pressing a light kiss to Madison's cheek. "Madison, sweetie, how long has it been? You must be drowning in Army paperwork. I don't know how you handle it. I'd go crazy without my yoga retreats." Before Madison can answer, Joanne's voice slices through the chatter. "Ethan, tell Madison your news." Ethan's grin widens as he shrugs off his jacket. "Well, Samantha Blake, the CEO, personally picked me to lead Vanguard's new cybersecurity initiative. Pretty wild. Huh, I'm running a team of 16. Even the old-timers are reporting to me now." Joanne claps her hands, eyes bright. "See, Madison, that's how you build a real career. Stability, respect, not gallivanting around in uniforms every couple of years." A sharp pang slices through Madison's chest, but she clamps down hard, hiding it behind a practiced blankness. "Congrats, Ethan, that's great." But inside, a voice whispers, "If only they knew. He's working on my contract." Joanne is already back in the kitchen, calling out details about the roast. Ethan launches into an animated monologue about budgets and timelines, Rachel nodding along like a bobblehead, eyes flitting occasionally to Madison with polite curiosity. No one asks Madison where she's been deployed. No one asks about the commendations gathering dust in a Pentagon file. She stands in the middle of her childhood home, swallowed by voices praising Ethan's corporate triumphs. Her own silence ringing louder than the laughter filling the house. Madison glances at the staircase, yearning for a moment alone. She feels like a guest in her own life, invisible among the people who should have known her best. Dinner is a symphony of clinking silverware and bubbling conversation. The scent of rosemary roast beef filling every corner of the dining room. Candlelight flickers across the crystal glasses, casting fractured reflections that dance over the faces gathered around the table. Henry Parker sits at the head, shirt sleeves rolled up, tie loosened just enough to suggest he's home, but never truly off duty. His eyes drift to his phone between bites, scanning for Vanguard emails, even as Joanne scolds him to put it away. Across from Madison, Ethan leans forward, gesturing dramatically as he recounts the details of his latest project. "So there I am in Samantha's office, and she says, 'Ethan, you're the only one I trust to lead the integration. It's high profile, big dollars, potentially a flagship contract for Vanguard. Can you believe it?'" Rachel beams at her husband, resting her manicured hand on his forearm. "He's been working nonstop. I keep telling him he needs to take a break, but he's just too dedicated." Joanne jumps in, voice dripping with pride. "That's the Parker way. Ambition runs in the family. Madison, You could learn a thing or two from your brother about how to plan for your future. Madison swallows a sip of water, forcing the cool liquid down the tightness in her throat. I'm doing fine, Mom. Are you, though? Joanne presses. You never talk about what you're doing. All this mystery, moving around every few years. No roots, no equity. How will you ever settle down? The scrape of Henry's fork cuts through the air as he looks up. Your mother has a point. Stability matters. I've been at Vanguard 30 years. You know how many times I've switched jobs once. Loyalty pays off. Ethan seizes the opening. Speaking of loyalty, Madison, do you even know what Vanguard's been up to lately? You should see the tech we're working on. Next level stuff. Cyber defense, predictive AI modeling. Samantha says it's going to change the entire landscape. Madison raises an eyebrow. Sounds impressive. It is, Ethan says, puffing up slightly. I'm spearheading the user interface overhaul. They needed someone with vision, someone younger who can connect the technical dots. Samantha was practically singing my praises in the last executive meeting. Rachel chimes in, eyes wide. She said Ethan might be in line for a regional VP track. Isn't that incredible? Henry nods, pride shining in his eyes. My boy, climbing the ladder, just like I did. Joanne waves her fork in Madison's direction. Your brother's making real strides. Meanwhile, you're still... what? A Captain A Major. Madison carefully cuts into her roast, each slice precise, deliberate, buying herself a few seconds to steady her voice. I've moved up a bit since then. Joanne gives a dismissive laugh. Well, as long as you're happy, but you'd be amazed how fast people your age are building portfolios, buying condos. Lily just closed on her second property in Seattle. And there she is, Lily Parker, Madison's cousin, stepping into the conversation for the first time. Lily with her sharp bob haircut and the kind of gaze that can cut through spin like a scalpel. Madison doesn't have to do things your way. Aunt Joanne! She's clearly got stuff going on, though you have been pretty secretive lately. Mads makes a journalist suspicious. Joanne huffs. Always digging for a story, that one. Madison's probably just embarrassed she hasn't settled down. A woman in uniform. It's not the easiest life for finding a husband. Is it? A flash of pain flickers across Madison's face. Gone almost as quickly as it comes. I'm not worried about that. Ethan tilts his head, feigning curiosity. Seriously, though, what's your rank now? Mom's always confused. Major Colonel, I can't keep it straight. And are you still moving around every couple years? Or are you finally done with that whole army phase? Madison opens her mouth, then closes it. Henry clears his throat. Enough career talk. Let's enjoy the meal. We've got the Vanguard event tomorrow, and I'd like to get an early start. But the air at the table has shifted. A quiet tension hums beneath the conversation, like a low electrical buzz. Madison forces herself to engage, asking Ethan about his new condo, Rachel about her yoga retreats, Lily about the latest scandal she's investigating. But inside, Madison feels the walls closing in. Not one of them knows the truth. Not one of them realizes that the entire future of the Vanguard project Ethan is bragging about rests squarely in Madison's hands. As laughter ripples around the table, Madison offers polite smiles, hiding the steady drumbeat in her chest. Tomorrow. Everything changes. Madison lies awake in her childhood bedroom, the glow-in-the-dark stars still scattered across the ceiling. Relics of a girl who once dreamed in constellations. The house has gone silent except for the ticking of the hallway clock, each second pounding louder than her pulse. She stares at the familiar shelves lined with yearbooks, old medals, and faded ribbons that once defined her worth in this house. But her uniform, the one that carries the weight of a nation, hangs hidden in the back of the closet, shrouded in shadows. Madison reaches for her phone, swiping through emails marked classified and urgent. One stands out, an encrypted message blinking like a heartbeat. Intel confirms Vanguard's new cybersecurity protocols are behind schedule. Potential breach risk identified. Request immediate review. Your authority required to proceed. Her thumb hovers over the screen, the reality settling in deeper than ever. Vanguard's future, Ethan's career, Henry's lifelong devotion to the company. They're all tangled in the same delicate web, and she's the spider at the center, holding it all together. Madison closes her eyes, and memories crash in like a wave. She's 19 again, standing in the living room as her parents loom over her, the ROTC brochure trembling in her hands. The military is for people without options. Madison, you're smarter than that. You belong in corporate, just like your father. Her father's voice had been gentle, but final. A verdict, not a conversation. Dad, it's what I want. Well, you'll never be anything there. Not really. Madison presses her palms to her face, willing those words to fade. But they linger, even now, on the brink of walking into Vanguard's boardroom as a colonel in the United States Army. They still echo inside her. She glances at the garment bag, hanging stiffly in the closet. The Silver Eagle insignia glints in the faint light sneaking past the blinds. A laugh escapes her, quiet and sharp. The same father who said she'd never be anything is about to learn that she's the one with final approval over the very contract he's staking his career on. And Ethan, so smug, so certain, will discover that his big promotion is built on a foundation that answers to her. But it's not just about proving them wrong. Madison pushes herself upright, determination blazing in her eyes. This project matters. Billions of dollars. Yes, but more than that, national security, lives protected. Cyber frontiers defended against unseen enemies. She scrolls back through the encrypted email, scanning the lines about potential infiltration vectors, foreign interest, vulnerabilities in Vanguard's network. Tomorrow, they'll all finally see me. Not the daughter, not the sister, but the colonel who stands between this country and chaos. She lowers the phone and breathes deeply. Sleep remains a distant hope as she lies back, staring at those plastic stars overhead, each one reminding her how far she's traveled from the girl who stuck them there. Tomorrow, her worlds will collide, and for the first time in years. Madison feels ready for it. Morning sun slices through low-lying mist, spilling gold across Portland's skyline as Madison cruises into the city. The hush of dawn, broken only by the quiet rumble of engines on I-5. Ahead, the sleek towers of Vanguard Defense Systems glint like blades under a clear Oregon sky, their glass facades mirroring the clouds drifting overhead. She turns into the underground parking deck, the low beep of a security scanner greeting her as a guard steps forward, eyes widening at the sight of her uniform. "Good morning. Colonel Parker. May I see your ID, ma'am?" Madison hands over her credentials, her voice crisp. Colonel Madison Parker, Pentagon Liaison for Project Aegis. The guard blinks, processing the rank silver eagles perched on Madison's shoulders like silent sentinels. "Yes, ma'am. You're cleared. Welcome to Vanguard." The moment she steps into the lobby, heads turn, employees freeze mid-stride, conversations dying on lips. It's not every day a full-bird colonel walks into the building, especially one as young as Madison. Sunlight spills across the marble floors, catching the burnished brass fixtures. Screens loop Vanguard's glossy promo videos, soldiers in night vision goggles, lines of code cascading down monitors, CEOs shaking hands with Pentagon officials. Madison strides past them all, boots clicking sharp as gunshots. Elevators open, swallowing her in mirrored chrome. Inside, she checks her reflection uniform immaculate, ribbons shining, hair pinned tight beneath her cap. But her eyes carry a storm. She breathes out slowly, centering herself. She needs that steel edge today, because beyond those glass doors upstairs sit the very people who've spent years telling her she'd never matter. The elevator dings open onto Vanguard's executive floor, a world of plush carpets and discreet conversations. The air scented faintly of expensive coffee and ambition. She steps out just as an assistant nearly collides with her, arms loaded with briefing folders. "Oh, Colonel Parker, we weren't expecting you in person today." "Change of plans. I'm here to review progress firsthand." Madison moves down the corridor, scanning familiar names on door placards. Samantha Blake, CEO. Thomas Grayson, VP Engineering. Henry Parker, Director of Regional Operations. Her father's name. She pauses outside his office, fingers grazing the polished metal letters, heart pounding like war drums. But there's no time to linger. She pushes onward toward the conference center, noting security teams sweeping the hallways. An officer radios updates about clearances and restricted access zones. "Colonel Parker, do you require an escort?" "No, thank you. I know the layout." She does. She studied Vanguard's schematics for weeks. She knows the location of every secured server room, every air-gapped system, every emergency protocol. And tucked beneath the secure pocket of her uniform blouse, Madison carries a new cyber risk assessment tool she developed herself, an algorithm capable of detecting anomalies invisible to legacy firewalls. They have no idea how close they came to a breach, and how close they still might be. In the final hallway before the boardroom, she passes glass offices where men and women in suits whisper into phones, eyes darting toward her as she strides by. Some recognize her from email chains. Others only know the title Pentagon Liaison. But none of them know she's Henry Parker's daughter. "Not yet." Madison squares her shoulders, the silver eagles on her uniform catching the light as she reaches for the handle of the conference room door. Time to show them who they've been dealing with all along. The heavy glass door glides open, and Madison steps into a cavernous conference room awash in cool LED light. The Vanguard logo emblazoned across an entire wall in sleek metallic lettering. An array of executives sit around a vast mahogany table, murmuring over sleek tablets and glossy printouts. Coffee steams from fine china cups, the scent rich and bitter. Conversation halts as every pair of eyes swings toward the uniformed figure in the doorway. Ethan Parker, halfway through adjusting his tie, freezes, his eyes widening like he's seen a ghost. Madison. "What? Why the hell are you in uniform?" Madison doesn't miss a step. "Good morning, everyone." Her voice rings clear, steady as command steel. At the far end of the table, Samantha Blake Vanguard's formidable CEO rises from her chair. Her black suit fits like battle armor, her dark hair pulled into a severe twist, eyes sharp enough to cut glass. "Colonel Parker, this is an unexpected pleasure. I thought we were scheduled for a video conference." Madison extends her hand, firm and professional. "Change of plans. I wanted to see the team in person. And the project." Samantha clasps Madison's hand, an approving smile flickering across her face. "Your initiative is appreciated. Everyone. For those who haven't met her yet, this is Colonel Madison Parker, Pentagon's primary liaison for Project Aegis. She oversees all technical specifications and has final approval authority over every phase of the operation." A hush ripples around the table, eyes darting from Samantha to Madison, then back to Ethan. Henry Parker leans forward, face pale, voice trembling. "Colonel, Madison." Madison holds his gaze, every syllable deliberate. "Yes, Dad, I'm the colonel overseeing your contract." Ethan's tablet clatters onto the polished wood. "What the hell is this?" "You're the Pentagon Liaison." "This whole time." Madison nods slowly. "For the last 6 months, since my promotion." Henry's mouth opens, but no words come out. Samantha clears her throat, steering the room back from the brink. "Well, Colonel, Perhaps you'd like to join us for the project review. Your insights would be invaluable. Madison slides into a seat, eyes sweeping the rows of schematics and progress reports scattered before her. Absolutely. Ethan shifts uncomfortably, sweat beading along his hairline. Samantha gestures toward him. Ethan, please continue your presentation. Ethan stands, throat bobbing as he tries to regain his confident swagger. As I was saying, we've developed a new user interface for the cybersecurity modules. Streamlined reporting. Efficiencies up 23%. Madison interjects, calm but piercing. What compensatory protocols have you implemented for multi-factor authentication bypass scenarios? Ethan blinks. Well, we're still evaluating best practices. Samantha, we're exploring some options. Madison leans forward, voice unwavering. Options aren't enough. Aegis is critical infrastructure. If those vectors aren't locked down, we're exposed to lateral movement attacks from hostile actors. I'll need a revised plan on my desk by end of week. Samantha glances at Madison, nodding gravely. Agreed. Ethan, make that your priority. Ethan looks stricken, his eyes darting from Samantha to Madison, then back to his slides. A subtle shift moves through the room, a recognition that the balance of power has irrevocably changed. Henry sits rigid, his knuckles white around a ceramic coffee cup. Madison continues, her tone as precise as a scalpel. Also, your projected deployment timeline is unrealistic. You're underestimating testing phases for cryptographic resilience. We can't afford shortcuts. We'll delay if we must. National security is not negotiable. Samantha nods again. Understood. Colonel Parker has the final say. A tremor runs through Henry's voice as he finally speaks. Madison, we should talk. Privately, Madison's eyes flick toward him. Unreadable. Later. Right now, we have work to finish. And just like that, she pivots back to the team, dissecting reports, issuing directives, her voice ringing with quiet authority. Executives lean forward, listening intently. Notes scratch across tablets. Questions fly her way, and Madison answers each with sharp, confident precision. Ethan watches her, shoulders sinking lower with every passing minute, realizing that the sister he once mocked now holds his professional fate in her hands. Henry stares at Madison as if trying to reconcile two irreconcilable truths, his daughter, and the colonel commanding the room. By the time the meeting adjourns, the whispers have begun. Did you know she was his daughter? Holy hell. No wonder she's been on all the Aegis briefings. Youngest colonel I've ever seen. Samantha shakes Madison's hand once more, firm and deliberate. Colonel Parker, impressive work today. You've made your presence felt. Madison meets her gaze squarely. This project is too important for anything less. And in that moment, surrounded by stunned executives, family members grappling with the truth, and whispers echoing through the glass halls, Madison knows the tide has finally turned. The conference room empties in a rush of shuffling chairs and murmured conversations, leaving behind only silence and the sharp scent of brewed coffee cooling on abandoned cups. Madison gathers her notes, methodically sliding them into a folder as if nothing seismic has just occurred. But the moment she stands, Henry is already moving toward her, face pale, lines carved deeper into his features than she remembers. Ethan lingers by the window, arms crossed so tightly across his chest it looks painful. Joanne appears in the doorway, cheeks flushed, eyes darting nervously between her husband and daughter. Madison, please, Henry begins, his voice hoarse. Come into my office. Madison nods once, her jaw tight. She leads the way, shoulders squared, uniform immaculate, as they file into Henry's glass-walled office overlooking downtown Portland. The door shuts with a soft click that somehow sounds like the ceiling of a vault. Inside, tension coils like a live wire. Henry tries to speak, then stops, running a trembling hand through thinning hair. Colonel, Madison, I don't understand. How could you keep this from us? Madison meets his gaze, her eyes cool and unwavering. I tried to tell you. For years. You didn't want to hear it. Joanne clasps her hands so tightly her knuckles go white. We thought you were just floating around, changing bases every few years, not building anything real. Madison takes a step closer, her voice low but edged with steel. The only reason I've been moving is because the Army kept promoting me. Because I've been entrusted with things that matter. Things bigger than any corner office. Ethan scoffs, though his voice cracks. So what, you come in here in your fancy uniform just to humiliate us, to make me look like a fool in front of the CEO? Madison's eyes flash. This isn't about you, Ethan, or even Dad. It's about doing my job, a job that happens to protect this entire country, including Vanguard, including your projects. Henry lets out a shaky breath, his voice barely above a whisper. You're a full-bird colonel at 29. That's like being a vice president here. Higher. Even, Madison nods once. Roughly equivalent, yes. Ethan paces, raking a hand through his hair. Why didn't you tell us, Mads? You made us think you were just drifting, wasting your degree. Madison clenches her fists, her voice trembling for the first time. I called you. I sent emails. I invited you to my promotions. But every time, you brushed it off, or changed the subject. You didn't want to see me as anything other than the girl who refused to follow the Parker blueprint. Joanne's eyes glisten with unshed tears. We only wanted you safe. We thought the Army would swallow you up, leave you with nothing. Madison's laughter bursts out, bitter and sharp. Nothing. I lead operations that keep American infrastructure from collapsing. I have clearance levels that most senators will never see. And yet, every time I came home, all anyone wanted to ask was if I was still just a captain. Ethan's voice softens, confusion bleeding into regret. So, you've been running the project. The Aegis contract I'm working on, that's under you. Madison stares at him, her tone clipped. Yes, I'm the Pentagon's final sign-off on every technical spec budget allocation and security protocol for Project Aegis. Ethan's shoulders slump. Jesus. No wonder Samantha's been stressing about the liaison meetings. Henry takes a step forward, his voice breaking. Madison, I should have been there. For your promotions. For everything. I thought I knew what was best for you. Madison breathes out, shaking her head. No. Dad. You knew what was best for you. And Ethan, you never stopped to consider I might be capable of choosing my own path. One that didn't fit the Parker mold. Joanne wipes a tear from her cheek. All these years, we didn't know you were becoming this. Madison's voice drops to a quiet ache. You never asked. A silence falls, heavy and suffocating. Then Ethan steps closer, his face raw and unguarded. Look, I've spent my whole life trying to outshine you. Because that's how it's always been set up. Who's the golden child? Who's the disappointment? And now I'm standing here realizing you've been playing an entirely different game. One I wouldn't survive a day in. Madison blinks back a sting in her eyes. It was never a competition, Ethan. It was to me, he whispers. And I'm sorry. Henry lowers himself into his chair like he's aged 10 years. I want to understand, Madison, I really do. If you'll let me. Madison pauses, then nods. I'll explain everything. But first, I have a country to protect, and a company to keep from imploding. So let's focus on the work. We'll talk tonight. Henry swallows, voice rough. Yes, Colonel Parker. Madison allows the smallest wry smile. Just Madison, for now. And in that quiet office amid the tension, regret, and the fragile threads of reconnection, Madison feels something shifting. For the first time, her family isn't looking at her like a disappointment. They're looking at her like someone they're finally beginning to know. Madison steps out of her father's office, the weight of the confrontation still pressing against her ribs. But there's no time to dwell. A vibration buzzes at her hip, her secure phone lighting up with a flashing alert. Possible breach detected. Immediate response required. Her pulse spikes, cutting through the lingering swirl of family emotions. She pivots sharply, weaving past clusters of employees whispering about the bombshell revelation. The building hums with low-level tension, as though every wall is listening. Inside the secure command center, screens flicker with lines of code tumbling like waterfalls, red highlights pulsing in time with warning chimes. An analyst with tousled blonde hair looks up, eyes wide behind wire-rimmed glasses. "Colonel Parker, you need to see this." Madison strides over, leaning in close as the young man explains. "It's subtle. Somebody's testing the perimeter. Low-volume probes, staggered IP rotations, classic signature masking. But there's something familiar in the packet patterns." Madison studies the code scrolling across the screen, her mind whirring. They're replicating traffic flows from last quarter's test exercises. That data was classified. Someone's either inside or has a mole feeding them our methodologies. The analyst swallows hard. "Ma'am, the attack vector is aiming directly at Vanguard's R&D servers." Madison inhales slowly, suppressing a shiver that races up her spine. "Shut it down. Black hole the suspicious IPs. Run an integrity check on every credential issued in the last 3 months. I want a full perimeter sweep. Quietly. No panic." He nods, hands flying across the keyboard. "Yes, ma'am." Madison turns away, jaw tight, feeling the weight of a new reality settling over her. This isn't just about proving herself to her family anymore. This is a war. Down the hall, Samantha Blake is speaking with 2 senior executives when Madison approaches. Eyes sharp. "Samantha, we have a situation. Vanguard's infrastructure is under active probing. Someone's trying to map vulnerabilities." Samantha stiffens, her expression all steel and focus. "How serious?" "Potentially catastrophic. Whoever's doing this knows how our internal audits work. This isn't random." Samantha's lips press into a thin line. "Foreign actors. Most likely, possibly state-sponsored. The pattern's too sophisticated for amateur hackers." A long silence stretches between them, filled with the soft electronic hum of the building's systems. "How exposed are we?" Samantha asks, voice low. "Depends how deep they've gotten, and how quickly we lock the doors." Samantha glances over Madison's shoulder and lowers her voice. "If news of this gets out before the Pentagon contract is secure, the board will panic, investors will pull funding, and half this company could lose their jobs." Madison's eyes narrow. "Then we keep it contained. I'm not losing this battle. Not here, not now." Meanwhile, Ethan hovers nearby, shifting from foot to foot as if torn between running away and stepping in. Madison turns to him, her tone all business. "Ethan, I need every shred of your interface documentation. Now. No excuses, no secrets. There could be vulnerabilities in your code paths they're targeting." Ethan hesitates, swallowing. Madison, it's not personal. I didn't know. I thought I was just building a UI." Madison steps closer, her voice dropping to a razor edge. "This is the difference between what you think you're building and what it actually protects. People's lives. National security. You don't get to be careless anymore." Ethan exhales shakily. "Okay. You'll have everything within the hour." Later, in the executive briefing room, Madison stands before a wall of screens filled with schematics and flashing data. Here's the bottom line. We're under coordinated cyber reconnaissance. If this becomes a full breach, Vanguard's not just looking at lost profits. We're talking exposure of classified military architecture, supply chain vulnerabilities, and national defense protocols. The fallout would ripple through every sector: financial, energy, transportation. Millions of lives could be impacted. Samantha crosses her arms, her voice low and fierce. What do you need from us, Colonel? Absolute transparency. No more corporate silos. I want direct access to your source code repositories, personnel logs, and every vendor contract. Effective immediately. Ethan speaks up, voice trembling. What about the board? They'll freak out if they know the Pentagon is practically taking over. Madison locks eyes with him. They can freak out later. Right now. I'm the firewall standing between Vanguard and disaster. Samantha gives a small, grim nod. Then you have whatever you need. And beneath the buzz of conference calls and rapid-fire keystrokes, a chilling realization settles in Madison's chest. This isn't just a family proving ground anymore. It's the front line of a hidden war. And she's the only one standing in the gap. Madison stands in Vanguard's command center, shoulders squared, eyes locked on the shifting patterns of code cascading down the screens like neon rain. Every alarm has been silenced, every alert boxed in green. A final keystroke echoes across the room, and the young analyst lifts his head, voice trembling with exhaustion and relief. Ma'am, the perimeter's clear. No further breach attempts detected. The network's stable. Madison exhales, slow and steady, the tension bleeding from her spine like a pulled knife. A cheer rises from the analysts and techs around her, weary smiles breaking through the fatigue. But Madison holds up a hand, her tone measured. This isn't over. They'll try again, but not today. She pivots towards Samantha Blake, who's been standing close by, watching her every move. Samantha steps forward, eyes gleaming. Colonel Parker, I've worked with Pentagon Liaisons for 15 years. I've never seen anyone handle a live incursion like that. You didn't just save our systems. You saved this company. Madison gives the smallest nod. It's my job, and my country. Samantha's voice softens. It's more than that. It's leadership, vision, courage. You belong at the table. Madison, any table you choose. Later that morning, in the same vast conference room where the family's world turned upside down, Madison sits beside Samantha as executives pour back in, faces pinched with worry and curiosity. Henry and Ethan slip into seats near the middle, both looking as though they've aged a decade overnight. Samantha calls the room to order, her voice firm. Before we continue, I want to acknowledge what happened this morning. Thanks to Colonel Madison Parker, Vanguard averted a catastrophic breach. She protected not just this company, but our national security. A rustle of surprised murmurs spreads around the table. Henry lifts his chin, clearing his throat, voice rough. Madison, Colonel Parker, I owe you an apology. For everything. For dismissing your path. For not understanding what you've been carrying all this time. Madison looks at him, something tender flickering in her eyes. Thanks, Dad. I may not understand half of what you do, Henry continues, but I know enough to say I'm proud of the woman and the soldier you've become. Ethan glances sideways, lips pressed into a thin line. Same here. Mads, for what it's worth, I'd follow you into any room. Even if it's one filled with generals and billion-dollar contracts. A ripple of quiet laughter breaks the tension. Light and genuine. Samantha leans forward, steepling her fingers. Madison, if you ever decide to transition out of active duty, Vanguard will make a place for you here. As an executive or a chief strategist, you'd be an asset anywhere. Madison hesitates, then smiles. I appreciate that, Samantha, but right now I still have work to finish. The meeting shifts back to business reports, timelines, budgets, but the tone has transformed. People glance at Madison with a new respect. Executives who barely noticed her name on email chains now defer to her insights, scribbling notes as she speaks. As the session wraps up, Samantha stands once more. One last thing. In light of today's events, Colonel Parker will remain on site to conduct further security evaluations. Her authority is absolute where Project Aegis is concerned. Henry nods firmly. Understood. As the crowd filters out, Madison gathers her papers, feeling a profound stillness settle into her bones. Samantha clasps her shoulder lightly. Whatever path you choose, Madison, remember this. You've proven yourself on the highest battlefield. There is the one nobody sees. Madison meets her eyes, voice low but resolute. I didn't come here to prove anything. I came to protect what matters. She casts one last look around the glass walls of the boardroom, a room that used to feel off limits. Untouchable. Now, it feels like just another place she belongs. And as Madison strides out into the bright corridors of Vanguard Defense Systems, her boots echoing with quiet power, she knows one thing for certain. Her family finally sees her, and the world will never again mistake her silence for insignificance. 6 months later, Madison stands at the floor-to-ceiling windows of her Washington, D.C. condo, city lights shimmering like 1,000 distant stars. The room hums with quiet laughter and the soft clink of glassware, the scent of roasted chicken and sage drifting from the kitchen. Her family sits around her modern dining table. Henry, in a crisp dress shirt. Joanne, fussing gently with a linen napkin. Ethan and Rachel side by side, leaning in close, eyes bright. Even Lily's there, notebook tucked away for once. Her phone set face down as a gesture of respect. So, Henry begins, clearing his throat, this place is incredible. You've done well, Madison. Madison smiles softly. Thanks. Dad, it's home. Joanne peers around, eyes lingering on the simple but elegant military memorabilia displayed on floating shelves. It's so neat, organized, military precision. Madison laughs, a genuine warm sound. Occupational hazard. Ethan raises a glass, the amber liquid catching the chandelier's glow. I still can't believe it. Half a year ago, I thought I was on top of my game. Turns out, I was working for my kid sister. Rachel nudges him, rolling her eyes. Correction, you were working under her. Laughter bubbles around the table, easy and unforced. Henry reaches into a slim cardboard box beside his chair and carefully lifts out a framed article. It shows Madison in uniform, shaking hands with high-ranking officials. Headline, bold, above the photo Cyber Command's youngest colonel defends national infrastructure. He sets it gently in front of her. I had this framed for my office. Figured you should have one too. Madison feels a tightness swell in her chest. Thank you, Dad. Henry meets her eyes. We were blind. Madison, you were building something extraordinary, and we didn't see it. I'm so damn proud of you. Joanne's voice trembles. I wish we'd asked more questions. Listened better. We didn't know how much you were carrying. Madison reaches across the table, squeezing her mother's hand. I know, but we're here now. After dinner, as plates are cleared and coffee is poured, Madison leans back in her chair, the city twinkling behind her like a million silent witnesses. She draws in a long breath, her voice steady but edged with softness. Can I tell you something I've learned over these past few months? The room quiets. People will underestimate you, even the ones who love you most. They'll box you in with their own expectations, or dismiss your choices because they don't understand them. And it's tempting to shrink yourself down to fit, to keep the peace. She pauses, letting her gaze drift to each person around the table. But here's the thing. The truth doesn't go away just because someone refuses to see it. Your worth doesn't vanish because others can't measure it. And sometimes, the greatest victories happen in silence, in work nobody sees, until the day they have no choice but to pay attention. Ethan leans forward, listening intently. So, you're saying I should never assume my little sister's just pushing papers? Madison laughs, shaking her head. Exactly. And for all of us, never assume anyone's story is small just because you only know the surface. Lily grins, tapping her temple. Noted. Makes for a hell of a headline, too. Madison smiles, feeling a warmth blooming in her chest that has nothing to do with the heating system humming beneath the floorboards. Here's one more thing I've learned. You're allowed to write your own story, even if it takes years for the people around you to read it. Henry raises his coffee mug in a silent toast. To writing your own story, and to the people brave enough to do it. Glasses clink. Madison gazes around the table, seeing not just her family, but people who are finally beginning to know her. And as laughter spills out into the night, echoing softly against the distant lights of the Capitol dome, she knows one thing with perfect clarity. Her path has always been valid. And now, everyone knows it.